Hi everyone, so the following will be a short video walking you through the exchange application process. So before you start submitting anything, you should make sure that you have received your letter of eligibility from your faculty, as well as your approved course selection form from your faculty. Now, if you're applying for the regular exchange program, you should have received only your first choice institution approved by your faculty, whereas if you're applying for the funded exchange program, you should have received all three choice institutions approved by your faculty. So quick note before we get started, for the internet browsers you should either be using Firefox or Google Chrome. Unfortunately for Mac users, our application does not really work well with Safari, so try to avoid using this one. So once you're in the uOZone account, under the Applications tab, you'll be able to find the link for the application portal near the bottom of the page. The page that opens gives you two different options in terms of application forms. The first is the application for the funded exchange program, so if you're applying for any of these programs here. The second application link is for the regular exchange program, so all other exchanges, and the link for the regular exchange program is right here. Once you've entered in the application portal, please make sure to read through the information page carefully. Once again, you should only be submitting your application once you have chosen 3 different universities. On this page is where you'll be entering your most basic information. In the section for the addresses, make sure to indicate if you have several different addresses. Now, your local address is the address where you live during the academic period, whereas the permanent address is rather where you live outside of the academic period. If the following summer you will be living at a different address than your permanent address, you can indicate it here as well. On this page, you'll have to enter an emergency contact. It does not necessarily need to be a parent or a family member. You also have the option to add multiple emergency contacts. On this page is where you should indicate your exact program of studies at uOttawa, rather than the subject of study at the host institution. On this page is where you should indicate all 3 of your chosen universities. Please make sure to choose 3 separate institutions, as if you only choose one, your application will not be considered as complete. For many of you, you have chosen mostly electives for your exchange period, so the courses you would be taking would not necessarily come from the same department as your current uOttawa department. For example, I am studying in biomedical sciences at the University of Ottawa. However, I have chosen that while abroad, I will be taking my psychology electives at the University of Bremen. So here it is important to indicate the subject of study at the host institution rather than the subject of study at uOttawa. In regards to obtaining language proficiency proof, here are a few different scenarios. So scenario 1 is if your first language is English and you will be studying only in English, you do not need proof. If your first language is French and you are studying only in French, you do not need proof as well. The second scenario is if your first language is English and you are studying in French, you will have to request proof under 3 different options. So if you're in French immersion, you must request a letter of proof. It will be at no additional cost, however. Second option is if you've taken already content courses at uOttawa and you've received a grade B or higher, you can also request a letter of proof. And third option is if you've not taken any classes at uOttawa that are in French, you will have to write a language proficiency test offered by the Bilingualism Institute. The third scenario is if your first language is French and you are studying in English at your host institution, you will also have to request a letter of proficiency. So if you've taken courses in English at uOttawa before and have received a grade B or higher, you will have to request a letter of proof. If you have not taken any classes in English at uOttawa, you will have to write a language proficiency test offered by the Bilingualism Institute as well. For the documents to be uploaded, first we have the letter of eligibility. So please make sure to request this to your faculty in advance, as different faculties have different methods of giving you the letter. You may or may not need to book an appointment with an advisor beforehand. Next, we have the co-op authorization. So what you should do is send an email to the co-op office to one of these advisors in order to obtain authorization to go on exchange. Next, we have the photocopy of the passport page. If your passport is set to expire soon, you could also just write a note on the photocopy stating that you're planning on renewing your passport shortly. For the identity photo, you do not need to go and get official passport style pictures. You can just upload an electronic regular one. You may need to get official passport style pictures later on, depending on if the host institution requires them. Next, we have the transcript of records. So in order to get your unofficial transcript, you should go in your uOttawa account. Under the Applications tab, you will find the unofficial transcript application. Once that is open, you're able to download the report. Next is the CV and letter of motivation. So both of these need to be written in French or English, as well as the language of instruction of the host institution for your first choice if it will be different than French or English. If you need any examples of CVs and letter of motivation, you can consult the Career Development Center's website. Here on the right-hand side, there's a link for resources. And essentially, you have examples of resumes and cover letters. Next, we have the course selection forms. So here's where you would submit your approved preliminary course selection for your first choice institution. If you're applying for the regular exchange program, only your first one needs to be approved, whereas if you're applying for the funded exchange program, all three of these would have to be approved. Next, we have the release of liability form. So this is a legal document, so you should read it carefully. In this section here, this is the information of an emergency contact rather than your own. At the end of the document, a signature of a witness is asked. Now, this witness can be anybody, and they do not need to come into the international office to sign it. Next, we have the administrative fee of $80 that is required to be paid before you submit your application. So the link for that is right here, and this brings you to the general store of the University of Ottawa. So right here is where you can purchase it, and at the end, when you're finished with your payment, you will receive an invoice that kind of looks like this, and the order number up here is what you should enter in your application. If you have already applied previously for the funded exchange program, please make sure not to pay for the administrative fee a second time. Congratulations, you have successfully completed your application for your exchange program. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us.